Welcome to the MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield. We offer you independent voices and underreported stories about topics you won't hear anywhere else. Join us as we delve into the deeper issues behind the news stories of the day on the MTC Report.
Said I'm gonna love you, baby, 'cause you're a real bad guy.
This is the Lorenzo of Unicorn Riot. We are across from Turtle Island. So you can see them on top of the hill watching as people are starting to gather here again. See people going in with scuba gear on and wetsuits to try to help folks get across. Again, the water's really cold. A boat full of people over now. Folks going over to the sort of beachhead that's been created. Police still on the ridge looking on. They're throwing tear gas off the boat now. Throwing tear gas off the boat. Boats moving away. I think they're going to try to get rid of it. You can see people in the gas. You can see this is the beachhead right here. There's maybe 100 people moving up the hill a little bit. I'm going to go check it out. They made a little water barricades, the boats, so the wardens can't come and throw tear gas anymore. You can hear them cheering. Now there's ferrying people over. More and more are massing on the beach. So right now we're behind a small barricade. More and more people are gathering along this line and inching up towards the top of the hill.
Don't go anywhere. The MTC Report with Mark Taylor-Canfield continues next.
Hi, this is Mark Taylor-Canfield, and this is the MTC Report. I'm a musician and a journalist, actor, writer here in Seattle, one of the best cities for music in the country. And my apologies if I look a little draggled, but not many people are getting sleep these days, especially if you're a journalist or a political commentator, given the latest revelations in the elections. And once again, I said, if I sound a little hoarse or sleepy, it's because lack of sleep. I know I was on a conference call with Michael Moore the other day, and he's not getting much sleep either. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Michael Moore has to say, by the way, about Hillary Clinton. And I'm also going to be doing the Tom Hartman Show this week, and the Norman Goldman Show, the Mike Malloy Show, and then my regular weekly commentary for the Jeff Santos Show, broadcasting nationally from Boston. We've been on Free Speech TV, he's also on a bunch of radio stations across the country. Just talking about the election and trying to give everybody an update. So that's what's been going on in my world. Some of the latest things that I've been looking at here is the fact that in Philadelphia on Election Day there will be a transit strike, which is going to make it pretty difficult for certain people to get to the polls.
A Philadelphia transit strike is sparking fears, that some voters could be kept from the polls on Election Day. Transit workers went on strike after midnight, which means buses, trolleyways that provide about 900,000 rides a day will not be running. Contract talks are still going on, but the sides are set to be miles apart. The strike does not affect the network of commuter rail lines outside the city.
So the Philadelphia transit workers went on strike early on Tuesday, halting bus, trolley, light rail, and subway transportation, according to ABC News. And there is a fear of a prolonged work stoppage that could create headaches for voters on Election Day. the state's most populous city. So this has some people concerned. There was a attempt to block the strike through a court injunction, but that did not go through. Actually, the court denied the injunction to end the Philly transit strike before Election Day. So there's one of the issues I'm looking at. And so any last-minute manipulation of the voting rolls or problems with voting could totally swing this election. And I hope that people are very aware of that. It's a serious situation.
Picture a little love nest, the Democratic Party. On one side it votes for Bernie, the leaders they want Hillary. He's doing phone banks, he's taking polls, and every day his campaign grows. And don't forget, folks, that's what you get, folks. We're voting for Bernie, that Bernie Sanders guy. It's one big mess, the party's splitting. And can't you guess, he feels neglected, and she's suspected of sleeping with Wall Street.
People said I had no health insurance or I had a high
This
deductible.
is the MTC Report, the news behind the news with journalist Mark Taylor-Canfield.
We can have a world-class healthcare system without waiting lines. I've been criticized saying that. Let me say it again. I believe health is a right of all people. I will fight for a Medicare for all single-payer system. Second of all right? You want to talk about rationing? You got 29 million people in this country who have no health insurance. How's that for rationing? They can't go to the doctor.
Now here's a place you always need a lot of friends.
According to the latest polls, it's pretty much a tie, which has surprised a lot of people, especially Democrats, who thought that Hillary was a shoo-in. She still seems to have the momentum going, but there's a lot of concern right now, especially with a lot of talk of potential voter suppression and voter purging from the rolls, especially in swing states.
Well, in fact, that's one of the things that I have been investigating is well, not only pipelines, but you can't take away people's rights and people's land and crap all over their land with hydrocarbons.
Apparently you can't.
Unless you take away their vote. And I'll have you know that the highest, dig this, if you are a black person, the chance that there'll be some technical reason why your vote doesn't count is 900% higher than if you're white. But if you're an American native, it's 2,000% higher than if you're white. There's no group that suffers more vote suppression, election theft, election rigging as victims than Native Americans. I saw this at the Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico and all over the place because both parties are hitting them because it's a matter, it's not Republican or Democrat, though most, about 95% of American natives vote Democrat. It's mainly them versus the 1% that wants their land. It's never changed. It's never changed, except instead of, cowboys with 6-shooters driving them off the land, it's elections officials who scrub their votes.
So I'm firing tear gas now along the ridge. It's really painful. I can feel it in my nose. People are being told not to panic. It burns a lot. My eyes are watering. It's really bad. The tear gas was really, really painful. It hit me pretty hard. But you can tell that people did not go anywhere. They're still on this ridge. And so after people bridged across the water, got tear gas 2 times, the elders said that this is a grave site, that people should come down. But there's also police officers on the grave site that have been there for days.
There have been many things during this election that were totally unexpected to me, things that I could never have predicted. For one, I never would have predicted, knowing Bernie Sanders, I would have never predicted that he would run for president. I just didn't think he would do it. Then number 2, I really would have never predicted that he would join the Democratic Party. Okay. Number 3, I would have never expected him to win 22 states across the country, including Washington State, Alaska, Hawaii, Oregon. And then I never would have predicted that he would endorse Hillary Clinton before the convention in Philadelphia, which, you know, that entire convention to people like me, journalists like me, turned out to be just a complete scam. I mean, it was ridiculous. There should have been a floor fight over a lot of the issues that led up to the nomination. Nothing was challenged because the Bernie Crats were just sat on, you know, by the Democratic National Committee. And now we know from the WikiLeaks releases what that was actually like and just how dirty and nasty the DNC was about their campaign against Bernie Sanders. So I have to be honest, you know, with a lot of folks I talk to in the Northwest who are not traditional liberals or neoliberals, they are, they've talked a lot about this split in the Democratic Party and how a lot of them felt betrayed by Bernie Sanders when he did endorse Hillary Clinton before the convention. They didn't get what they wanted from the convention, even on the platform. They don't think that it's strong enough on the TPP. And so there you go. They want universal health care, single-payer system, other things that the Democrats, you know, are not pushing the way that the Bernie-crats would like. Also, a lot of people who supported Bernie Sanders and raised money for him and volunteered for his campaign felt pretty betrayed, you know, personally, because they just thought he just sort of dropped out of the race and left everybody stranded, which since then has become this thing called the Our Revolution campaign across the country, which does support a lot of progressive Democrats, but, you know, also other non-Democrats have been interested and involved with that movement. Now in Washington State, as I mentioned in my last report, we have Pramila Jayapal, who's probably going to win Jim McDermott's seat after his retirement. She's very popular, very progressive, and has always been known as a bold progressive fighter, which is actually her campaign theme. But it's actually an accurate description of her. I've known her for years, and I know exactly what she's like. She's also married to the former head of the King County Labor Council, which is a huge organization involving most of the unions in this area of the country, or this area of the state. So the election's coming up in the next couple of days. A lot of people are still trying to decide whether they're going to vote for Jill Stein or Gary Johnson. There's this whole Trump scare factor that is pushing a lot of people towards voting for Hillary while holding their nose. It's just I'm just reporting what I know, folks, and what people have been telling me. Of course, I live in Seattle in the Northwest, which is a very progressive area of the country. So we have our own little bubble here of progressive politics. But Hillary Clinton did get booed during a Bernie Sanders rally here just a couple of weeks ago with Pramila Jayapal. But, it didn't seem to be an issue. I mean, I think people in this area and the Bernie Sanders campaign folks and Pramila Jayapal's campaign, by the way, she came out very early in supporting Bernie Sanders, but they expected that kind of reaction. And that's a problem that the Democratic Party has not solved. They have not reached out to progressives the way that they should. They have not really embraced the working class in this country and addressed populist ideas and issues, some of which Donald Trump has, unfortunately. I mean, not unfortunate that those subjects have come up, but that it's delivered in that kind of a package. But here we go. It's another crazy U.S. election. It's totally unpredictable. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. There's all sorts of issues about voter suppression and manipulation. So who knows what's going to happen? But I do know that it's the fourth thing or the fifth thing, I guess, on my list. The other thing that I could have never predicted was, one, on the Republican side, that Donald Trump would be the nominee, and two, that it would be this close. I really did not expect that. There's a big independent populist movement in this country. I think a lot of those people are actually progressives or slightly on the left side of things, but there are also a lot of conservatives who feel very disenfranchised and dissatisfied with the system and not represented. So there you go. You've got it on both sides. You've got the Bernie-crats who don't feel represented in the Democratic Party, and you've got the Trump folks who don't feel like the Republicans really were listening to them. So the two parties are sort of split. And in one case, the insurgency candidate actually won the nomination, which if it had happened on the Democratic side, by the way, I predict that I had predicted that Bernie Sanders would be the next U.S. president because he was so popular amongst a lot of people, even independents and conservatives. Some conservatives, actually, who had been lifelong Republicans, told me that they were really disappointed that they didn't have a chance to vote for him because they could not, with a good conscience, vote for Donald Trump. They just couldn't do it. It was like beyond their imagination. So they wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders because they don't like Hillary Clinton. Now, in the past, a lot of conservatives really didn't like Hillary Clinton, partly because she represented sort of a feminist movement. And so, it was traditional for conservatives not to like Hillary Clinton. I mean, folks like Rush Limbaugh bashed her all day long. But after Bernie Sanders entered the election in the Democratic Party, it wasn't him so much because he was actually being very polite to her. But his followers were very critical of Hillary Clinton and the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. They felt shut out. They felt pushed around and abused. So, when it came time to support Hillary Clinton, they were not enthusiastic. And they still aren't, But that's the situation. So, check out my blog at Daily Kos. I'm writing at Truth Out. And then every Tuesday I'm on the Jeff Santos Show, broadcasting from Boston on the Revolution Radio Network. It's a great show. It's very independent, progressive politics. Very authentic guy, so good thing to check out. There's fewer and fewer of them left in the U.S. media. And I also write at the Capitol Hill Times. I'm a guest columnist there. And I'm contributing editor for Democracy Watch News. We have a podcast called Democracy Cast, so you can check that out at Libsyn or iTunes or all over the place. So we also have weekly press briefings and do a lot of very interesting interviews with people. So you can follow also Democracy Watch News on Twitter and Facebook. There's a global feed actually on Twitter for places all over the world. So take care, everybody, and you gotta love democracy, and we gotta make it work. That's all I have to say. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield for the MTC Report.
A lot of spin, it's a lot of hype, and Hillary's nervous, she answers twice. It's really thrilling that they're so willing to vote for Bernie. Yeah, Bernie Sanders.
Another thing that just came out that I thought was interesting was a very interesting article in the Financial Times. And it's called Ideas That Fed the Beast of Fascism Flourish Today. And this is an article by Mark Mazauer. And so here's some interesting points that I should probably point out here. Underpinning the rise of fascism was a profound crisis of liberal democracy. The real lesson waiting to be learned is from this interwar crisis of democratic institutions. Before the First World War, people fought hard to expand the power of parliaments and enshrine constitutions. Afterwards, with startling speed, these things lost their allure. So across Europe, many blamed the power of the legislature for society's woes, and they wanted to see more power in the hands of a single leader. Parliaments were written off as facades that rubber-stamped what unaccountable lobbies and elites demanded. So here's a parallel that Mazauer is pointing out about the historical period we're in today. The most striking parallel is that political parties moved to the extremes and spoke about one another as if they were fundamentally illegitimate. Now, does this sort of sound like the Republicans and the Democrats? Judicial and police became politicized. And, of course, we have no problems with the police in this country. It is this crisis of institutions that provides the most striking parallel between the Weimar Republic of Germany prior to World War II, and the U.S. today. And in fact, in this article, they point out that dictatorship never really went away and may even be coming back, because the latest example in Turkey, where the president has assaulted the media and the universities, marks a new low for basic freedoms in that country. Reporters Without Borders, as I pointed out before, says that 2016 was a great year for censorship and dictatorship and suppression of freedom of speech around the world. The United States is currently ranked 41st in the world in terms of press freedom by Reporters Without Borders, which is an international advocacy group for journalists. But according to Mazauer, fascism was always about more than just the dictators. In fact, I'll read directly from his article. Indeed, as a conservative political thinker wrote many decades ago, it's a kind of liberal illusion to focus on the figure of the dictator as though one person is the only problem. Because according to Mazauer, the real problem lies in the dictator's shadow, in the conditions that enable the leader's rise. The hollowing out of the basic institutions without which no modern state or society can really survive or govern itself, the extremism of political discourse. These things are already here with us in the United States. And if the current election is any example of that, especially the Trump campaign, it's pretty prevalent in the political dialogue in the United States. So I would highly recommend that folks go to the Financial Times website and read this article by Mark Mazauer. It does have some insight into what's going on today, and as I wrote in my Daily Kos piece, Donald Trump has definitely taken some direct cues from El Duce, Benito Mussolini, and other totalitarian leaders. Just his attitude and his stance, his body language and all of that is pretty obvious that he's got a dictatorial streak, for sure.
Every time Donald is pushed on something which is obviously uncomfortable, like what these women are saying, he immediately goes to denying responsibility. And it's not just about women. He never apologizes or says he's sorry for anything. So it's not one thing. This is a pattern. a pattern of divisiveness, of a very dark and in many ways dangerous vision of our country, where he incites violence, where he applauds people who are pushing and pulling and punching at his rallies. That is not who America is. And I hope that as we move in the last weeks of this campaign, more and more people will understand what's at stake in this election. It really does come down to what kind of country we are going to have.
So sad when she talks about violence at my rallies, and she caused the violence.
The same amount of
Von den blauen Bergen kommen wir, de la Bluae Montoi Venas.